4 years after the Battle of Yavin, the Emperor developed a plan which would end the Galactic Civil War. Rather than continuing to fight the Rebel Alliance in various small skirmishes, the Empire instead took a big risk. They created an improved version of the Death Star, moving the Emperor to the new battle station, leaking its plans to the Rebel Alliance, and presenting it as an undefended, soft target. The goal? Well, to go to the Alliance into an all-or-nothing battle, which they would lose. This actually went mostly to plan, at least initially. The Alliance brings nearly its entire navy to battle, and not only is the Death Star 2's deflector shield still up, but the Alliance is being jammed, and an Imperial task force slinks out from behind the moon of Endor. However, somewhere along the line, things go wrong. The shield falls, the Imperial fleet is in disarray, the Alliance holds their own, and even destroys the mighty Executor, which begs the question, while the Empire's forces at the battle were undoubtedly impressive, why didn't they bring even more ships? The Empire, in both canon and legends, was said to operate 25,000 Star Destroyers alongside millions of support ships. Why then did they go with 30 or so Star Destroyers instead of just overwhelming the Alliance completely? So I have a few thoughts on this issue. However, because it's never been directly addressed in canon or legends, at least to my knowledge, these ideas are mostly my opinions, and not necessarily found in the source material. First, let's talk about the crux of the Emperor's plan. The Alliance was lured to Endor and trapped by an Imperial fleet. Palpatine planned to use the fleet's destruction at the hand of the Death Star 2 as a way to turn Luke to the dark side, while of course also wiping out the Alliance in a single engagement. I won't be going over the specifics of Imperial strategy today, as I've already done that and made suggested improvements in a prior video. However, what we do need to know is that the Imperial Starfleet and the Death Star were used to basically squish the Alliance between a rock and a hard place. And this fact, that the Star Destroyers were meant to prevent retreat primarily, helps explain why there wasn't an absolutely overwhelming force brought to bear. And Lando's tactics at the battle have actually been described as both novel and unexpected. That being said, I don't quite get that, as one could hardly expect the Alliance fleet to just sit there and take a beating from a super laser. But going deeper into things, besides for the lack of foresight, I think one argument for the constrained Star Destroyer usage has to do with the trap element of the battle. Remember, the Emperor wanted the Alliance to think they were attacking a relatively unprotected space station. Any resistance had to seem both natural and beatable. Too many defensive ships means that the bait isn't lucrative enough to offset the potential catastrophe should the attack fail from a rebel perspective. The Alliance was unprepared to fight Star Destroyers, not only at Endor, but just generally. I think, had they known the strength of the Emperor's forces and that the Empire knew they were coming, they would have called off the attack. However, because it was supposed to be a surprise, the rebels didn't expect resistance on the ground, and thus the shields to stay up, or for the Imperial Starfleet to attack them from the rear. Maintaining the element of surprise was essential, and even a central point to the first level of the canon Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign. Iden deletes a message which would have alerted the rebels to the Empire's plans. It would have been very difficult to hide a gigantic fleet. Even Death Squadron had an active presence, but that made sense. Death Squadron was a special roving fleet under the command of Vader, which was actively hunting the Alliance across the galaxy. Vader's appearance alongside his master at the DS2, and thus the fleet's presence, is not surprising. The rest of the force is hidden before the battle even begins, including as the shuttle Tidarium approaches the planet. Keeping your force small and manageable makes this sort of deception much simpler. On one hand, if you have a few extra Super Star Destroyers and a few dozen more regular Star Destroyers, any Rebel recon mission is quite likely to pick them up. Additionally, and much more importantly in my mind, the fleet was small enough that not only would missing ships not be noticed across the galaxy, unlike the case if you took a few dreadnoughts for example, but it's much easier for the starships to covertly rendezvous at Endor. with hundreds of ships traveling to the planet, I think you run a real risk of the maneuver being discovered. However, it goes deeper than this. The Sanctuary Pipeline was an artificial hyperlane propped up by Imperial technology and used to secretly move cargo and materials to Endor. This was the route that the rebels actually used to attack the station itself, thanks to navigational data discovered by Bothan informants. It's almost certain that after finding out about the Death Star plans, the Alliance would have been watching for any movement to and from Endor, monitoring local traffic. So Palpatine was limited in reinforcements that he could subsequently bring to the planet, without giving away his knowledge of the upcoming attack, which again is paramount. So to summarize, there were psychological feints and subterfuge from both sides. The Alliance wanted the attack to be a surprise one, and the Empire wanted the Alliance to think the attack was still a surprise. By keeping a small force, the Empire doesn't show their hand, and after the plan is started, Palpatine is limited in the reinforcements that he could subsequently call in. So you take 30 ships, a lot, but probably not enough to be missed, and keep them behind the moon of Endor. The more ships you take, the more you risk the rebels catching on to your plan. And, at least according to Palpatine, 30 ships would have been more than enough to win the battle without unnecessarily risking too much fleet movement or even perhaps weakening your forces somewhere else in the galaxy. There is an element of arrogance here, but it also makes sense, at least when it comes to the space battle. Palpatine didn't see the failure of his own troops at Endor as even a possibility. This, not the lack of ships, was the real catalyst for the destruction of the second Death Star. Because let's be frank, had the Death Star shield not gone down, the rebel fleet would have either been obliterated by the Death Star, or, even after being led unorthodoxically towards the Star Destroyer line, eventually destroyed in a slugging match. The rebels had decent firepower. However, although this Imperial fleet was small compared to the Empire's total forces, they still significantly outgunned the Alliance. And the rebels only survived because of a series of events, which started with the shield going down, then led to the Executor being destroyed, and later Palpatine dying, and the coordinated effects of his battle meditation with it. And when you think about things from that perspective, and again that this whole battle was really meant to be a display for Luke alongside a destruction of the rebels, one can understand from Palpatine's mindset why you really wouldn't need any more ships. But that's just my opinion. To summarize again, there were psychological and behavioral reasons for keeping a small fleet, which would have outgunned the rebels, but existed only to stop them from retreating anyway. No Q&A today, we'll pick that back up with my next video. If you do have a question, make sure to leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck. Until next time guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.